is for education and entertainment purposes only. Please consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health plan. Hey beautiful soul, it's Jacqueline here from the Lost Labia Chronicles in partnership with Lichen Sclerosus Support Network. If you are looking to empower yourself with information, find acceptance, and reclaim your life, then please subscribe to our channel and keep on watching. And if you have a friend, family member, or loved one with lichen sclerosus, and you want to learn more about the physical and mental health aspects of living with lichen sclerosus so that you can better support them in their journey, then please keep on watching and please share this channel with them as well. All right, so in today's video, we are going to be having a discussion about a highly requested topic, which is hair removal and lichen sclerosus. So I'm going to chat with you about my experience, how I used to remove hair, how I remove it now, what worked, what made things worse, and my ultimate favorite way to remove hair as somebody with LS right now. As always, if you find the information in these videos helpful, please give us a like, please subscribe, and if you have any comments or want to share your experience with hair removal and lichen sclerosus, please do so in the comments below. Before jumping into my experiences and how I prefer to remove hair now, I want to start really important here with a caveat, which is you do not have to remove your hair. Hair removal is a personal choice, so I don't want anyone watching thinking that if they have lichen sclerosus, they have to remove their hair. That is not the case. Plenty of folks choose to keep their pubic hair with lichen sclerosus, and in fact, they say that that's when they feel their best. Other folks feel that the hair irritates them, so they prefer to remove it. Everybody's different, but again, I just don't want anyone to think that it is a necessity to remove your hair if you have lichen sclerosus. For those of you who know my diagnosis story, and if you don't know my diagnosis story and you're curious, I will leave a card up there and I'll also leave it linked in the description below so you can check that out on your own time. But for folks who are familiar with my story, you know that I started experiencing symptoms in my early 20s. However, at the time, I didn't really take any special considerations with respect to removing my pubic hair because first of all, I didn't know I had LS. My diagnosis actually took a little over 10 years. So during that interim, I just knew I had something and I was very symptomatic, but I didn't know what was causing this. So again, didn't really think much about hair removal and what I should and shouldn't be doing. Now I did, and I have to admit, I did feel the pressure to remove my pubic hair. I know a lot of the boyfriends that I had in the past, they were very familiar with the vulvas that they see in porn. And again, a very specific type of porn. So we're talking like bare, no hair, like they really looked a certain way. And so I felt the pressure to kind of mimic what they were seeing and expecting. So I went for regular waxing, and I would do a full pelvic wax, which includes the mons pubis, the bikini line, and then it also includes the inner lips around the clitoris and all the way up your butt crack. It's lovely. If you've had a wax before, you know that lichen sclerosus or not, waxing can be uncomfortable and sometimes painful. And it is important to say that everybody's perception and experience of pain is going to be different, right? So it might be painful to me. Maybe you're like, it was a walk in the park. But for me, it was always painful. And looking back, I do think that it did kind of exacerbate some of my issues. So I was getting kind of more fissures after, whether it was caused by the wax and the pulling and tugging from the wax, I'm not sure, because again, at that point, I wasn't really too mindful. I didn't know what I should be watching for. And so that's kind of how I proceeded for years. I just kept getting those waxes, as uncomfortable and painful as they were. I just kept doing it until I was a little bit older and I decided to go for laser hair removal because I was tired of getting the waxes, if I'm being honest. It was like they were really painful for me and it was tedious and it was something that I had to go for regularly. I kind of just wanted to not have to think about it. So I did go for laser because I was young, I don't really remember how many rounds. I don't remember if it was like 8 or 10, but I did go for multiple rounds of laser, did the whole thing. Back then, I can't speak to the lasers that we have now. Maybe they're better, but back then they were still quite painful. So just as an FYI, if you're considering laser hair removal, it may not be a walk in the park pain-wise. Again, remembering that everybody's experience of pain is going to be different. And for me, I was like, holy crap, this still really, really hurts. But alas, I did it anyways. I didn't really seem to be experiencing any like post fissures when I did the laser. But like the process of it was painful, right? So I did do that. And afterwards, like after that series of treatments, there really wasn't too much regrowth. I would initially call it more something akin to peach fuzz. So something that could just be quickly shaved away or kind of trimmed or something like this. And that's just kind of how it was when I met my husband, when we first started dating before we got married. That's just kind of how I just kind of maintained with a little shave here and there because there wasn't too much regrowth, and the regrowth that did occur took like months. So if I like shaved that little bit of hair, I could go like 3 months before there was enough hair for me to kind of merit that shaving. So that's kind of how I took care of hair removal up until the point that I got my lichen sclerosus diagnosis. However, by the time I got my diagnosis, my lichen sclerosus was quite progressed in terms of symptoms. I was always in pain, always stinging, always burning, always irritated, always sore. So I had no desire to touch anything down there in terms of hair removal. And luckily, my husband is one of those people who is just super chill and super accepting. And he was like, if you just want to grow it out, grow it out. Like, that doesn't bother me. I love you with no hair, a little bit of hair, designs, like you do you, but you're more than just your pubic hair to me. So, and I'm incredibly grateful to be with somebody like that who just kind of was like, no, do what's best for your health, physical and mental. That's what I want you honoring at all times. So that's kind of what I did. I just kind of let it grow out. And again, because I had those prior laser sessions, it was never like full bush moment. You know what I mean? It was more like there was definitely hair, but it wasn't too much. And so that's kind of how I was for the first few years of, post lichen sclerosus diagnosis. When I started topical testosterone to help unfuse my clitoris, and if you're like, wait, hold up. She said, what? You unfused your clitoris? Yes, I did. I unfused my clitoris without surgery. And if you want to learn more about different ways to unfuse your clitoris, I will leave a video up here. I will leave some links in the description box below, including an Instagram live that I did on my page a while back where I told my whole story about how I unfused, and people were kind of asking their questions in real time and I was answering those as we went along. So if you want to check that out, the replay is up on my Instagram page at the Lost Labia Chronicles. Again, all the links are always down below in the description box for you to check out afterwards. But when I was using testosterone to unfuse my clitoris, one of the potential side effects of using topical testosterone is an increased growth of hair in the pubic area. This did happen to me. I did notice way more hair growth than before. It was a bit denser. There was just much more of it. And again, this didn't really bother me, if I'm being honest, because for me and my body personally, I was way more enthusiastic about unfusing my clitoris and getting a clitoris with more sensation that was healthy versus some hair growth. I knew in the back of my mind that if the hair growth really bothered me, I could look into different hair removal processes to get rid of it. So one of my besties actually works at a sugaring salon, and she had been ranting and raving about sugaring for basically since she started working there and a little bit before, because she's such a huge fan. And in fact, sugaring is actually one of the top recommendations from gynecologists when it comes to removing hair for people with lichen sclerosus or people that have different vulvar dermatoses or sensitive skin. What is sugaring? Good question, because when I first heard about it, I was like, sorry, what? What do you mean sugaring? I actually thought they just took granules of sugar, like white sugar, and I thought they just like really aggressively scrubbed, like the most aggressive exfoliation process of life. That's what I thought the first time I heard about sugaring for hair removal. So what sugaring actually is sugaring uses food grade ingredients like sugar, lemon or lime, and water, and they mix that into this paste-like substance. I'll kind of pop an image of what that looks like next to me. So they make that little paste-like substance, and with gloved, they're always gloved, of course. So with that paste-like substance, they apply it to the skin and then they flick it off to remove the hair. And that is sugaring hair removal. Let's briefly chat about the differences between waxing and sugaring and why overall sugaring is the superior option for folks with lichen sclerosus and other vulvar dermatoses that causes the skin to be a little bit more fragile or sensitive. So the first difference between the two is actually the solution. So remember that with sugaring, it's only 3 ingredients, that and nothing else. Sugar, lemon or lime, and water. That's it, that's all. When it comes to the wax solution, we're talking about different resins, beeswax, and then there's usually a lot of artificial fragrances, dyes, and additional ingredients. Now, because the ingredient list for waxing solution is longer than sugaring, and because of all those artificial chemicals, people are more prone to experience allergic type reactions when it comes to the 2 solutions, whereas the more simple ingredient list is way less likely to cause allergic type reactions. The second difference is temperature. So the waxing solution is applied quite hot. In fact, so hot that some people experience second-degree burns. In fact, if you've watched my video with the CEO of Private Pack, Suzanne, and again, I will link a card up there if you want to go check that out, one of the main motivators behind creating her product was she got a Brazilian wax and got second-degree burns all over her vulva. Because again, the wax is applied at a very hot temperature. Conversely, sugaring is applied at room temperature, so there's no risk of burning and harming the skin in that capacity. The third difference between sugaring and waxing is the integrity of the skin and the health of the skin. So when wax solution is applied to the skin, the wax adheres to both the skin and the hair. What does that mean? That means that when your technician removes that wax, it's not only pulling out the hair, but it's also pulling off part of the skin. So this, for people with lichen sclerosus, whose skin is more fragile, more prone to cracking, fissuring, tearing, can cause micro fissures and damage to the skin. Not only folks with lichen sclerosus, but also folks with vulvar psoriasis, vulvar eczema, and other skin conditions. That micro damage can trigger flares and cause a lot of extra pain. So when we talk about skin health and skin integrity, it's probably not the best option. Sugaring, on the other hand, when it's applied to the area, it only attaches to the hair. So it's actually never touching the skin. It doesn't pull off. So when your technician pulls, it's only removing the hair. So there's no micro damage caused to the skin, which again, for folks with sensitive skin, skin that's more fragile, skin that's prone to cracking, fissuring, and irritation, you're less likely to experience that type of irritation as you would when you go to get a wax. The last difference between sugaring and waxing is pain. While I highlighted many times throughout this video already that we all experience pain differently, and what might be painful to me may not be painful to you, overall the consensus seems to be that sugaring is way less painful than waxing. And when you hear, I'm going to share my experience with sugaring up next, but I can definitely corroborate this. I absolutely can say that sugaring is way less painful than any wax that I've ever got before. So those are the 4 main differences, and this is why many gynecologists and dermatologists recommend sugaring over waxing for hair removal. Okay, so I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, and I just want to chat with you about my experience with hair removal with lichen sclerosus. So as I mentioned before, with the testosterone, I did notice an increase of hair in the pubic area, And since my bestie worked at a sugaring salon, and since all the gynecologists recommend sugaring over waxing and shaving, which can be really irritating for a lot of folks with lichen sclerosus, I thought, let's give it a go. Now, if you know me, you know that I'm a baby steps gal. Seldom do I just jump into things full force. So what I did was I booked my first appointment, not for a full pelvic while they would remove everything. Instead, I said, just remove the hair on the bikini line, so that kind of groin area, and the mons pubis. The mons pubis, if you're not familiar with that part, if you are standing straight in front of a mirror and you're naked, it is that upside down triangle that sits in between your two hip bones. So I said, just do those areas first. Basically, I wanted to see for myself how painful it was. I wanted to see if my skin got irritated at all, and I wanted to see if it triggered a flare. So after, the procedure itself was really quick, and honestly, the pain was pretty mild. I was able to kind of keep a straight face and talk with my technician through the majority of it. So it really wasn't too bad for me. A couple hours later, I got home, and pretty much I just kind of went on with my day. I didn't really notice any pain, any irritation, anything like that. At the end of the night, I just checked my vulva to see what was going on, and is there any kind of changes that I should be mindful of? I did notice a lot of really, really small purplish bruising, which I read could be normal with sugaring. So because it didn't hurt, I didn't really pay much attention to it. What I did do though is I use a product by Sweet Spot Labs, which is their bikini bump remover. I'll pop it up on the screen. Not sponsored, just the best product. I swear by this and always have some. So it helps prevent ingrown hairs and bumps and stuff like that. Really good to use after hair removal of any kind. And that actually overnight kind of got rid of the bruising for me. The bruising, there was really just mild bruising the next day, and then by the second day it was gone. And so I was like, okay, great. So that lasted me quite some time, and I didn't really, other than that mild bruising initially, there was no pain, there was no irritation, there was no soreness, there was no itching, and it didn't trigger a flare. So I went in to book my second appointment a few months later, and this time I actually did I just dove right in. I said, okay, full pelvic, take it all off. And they're like, everything? And I'm like, everything. Because again, this was more, I wanted to see and know, is this an option for me? Can I potentially do a full pelvic in the future? If I'm going to a beach and I have a really small bikini or something, can I do this? So the mons pubis area, the bikini line, quite easy in terms of pain. The more the technician kind of moved inward, the more painful it got. And I do think that with the pain, there was some bodily remembering and holding. So I noticed that because my inner labia and around the clitoris, that's an area that for me was really reactive with lichen sclerosus, I would automatically or subconsciously kind of tense my pelvic floor, tense all my body muscles if I'm being honest, and I would stop breathing. And so my technician would have to put her hand on me and be like, okay, we're gonna take a minute, we're just gonna breathe. And I would be like, oh, okay. So I think that tensing made the pain a little bit worse at first, but overall, not too bad. I managed to get through it. And one really important thing that I want to note here is that when I saw this technician the second time, I mentioned the bruising. And she said, thank you so much for letting me know, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change up the paste a little bit so they can add more or less sugar to make it stiffer or less stiffer. And so she basically made slight alterations to the formula so that it was more gentle, and she was also just a little bit more mindful of how she was doing it. So that's one thing that we're going to talk about in a bit, is really be transparent with your technicians. Let them know that you have lichen sclerosus. Let them know you're more prone to bruising. Let them know you're more prone to fissuring. Let them know everything so that they can adjust accordingly. So we did that. I walked home, didn't have any pain. This time, one thing she did say I could do, she was like, use ice after, and that may help, prevent some bruising and some inflammation and mild soreness. So what I did do is I took my Private Pack, which I talk about all the time because they're one of my favorite products, and I have those all the time in my freezer. So I took one of those out, put it in its little protective sleeve, popped it in my underwear, and I just kind of iced my vulva for about probably 15 minutes or so. Right when I got home, I did that right away, and then I put it away, and then I iced a couple other times throughout the day. Once while I was working at my desk, because you can kind of wear them around your house, right? So I used that. I used the Sweet Spot Labs Bikini Bump Eraser, and this time I had no bruising. No bruising whatsoever. My skin looked great. Everything was healthy. It didn't trigger a flare. I had no fissures, no pain, no nothing. It was perfection. And then this lasted me like almost 2.5 months was how long I could go before there was enough hair to get sugared again. And then so, you know, I did do the sugaring again. We did the full pelvic again, no bruising, no complications, no triggering of a flare. The pain actually gets better each time you go. It's like your body kind of gets used to it. So that was a plus as well. So this is now my favorite way to remove my hair. You know, I don't know that I'm going to do it as much in the winter, but I do like to do it in the summer when I go swimming a lot. And it's just a great way for me and my body to remove my hair. Okay, so we started this video with a caveat, and we're gonna end this video with some caveats. Okay, when shouldn't you get hair removal, sugaring, or any kind? If you have any open cuts, sores, tears, fissures, anything like that, I would completely abstain until those open areas heal. Whether it's shaving, waxing, sugaring, laser hair removal, or another technique, I would completely let those areas heal up before going. Otherwise, if there's no open wounds, sores, anything like that, you should be good to go. That said, my personal feeling on the matter is also that even if I didn't have any open wounds, if I was in a really bad flare, so whether that looked like a lot of pain or a lot of itching, I would probably abstain, and I would probably wait for that flare to kind of settle before going. But that's just my personal opinion and how I would do it for me. There's no kind of rule about this in the medical community. That's just kind of me feeling into my body and knowing what feels right or wrong for me. The second caveat that I want to mention is the importance of communicating with your technician. So the place that I get sugaring at, most of the techs kind of already know about lichen sclerosus. So that was really, really helpful. But it is important to let your technician know, like, hey, I have lichen sclerosus. This can make me itchy, or this makes me have a lot of pain. My skin is really prone to bruising, or my skin is prone to cracking and fissuring. Whatever your case is, let them know. Don't just say I have lichen sclerosus. Tell them how it impacts you so that they have a better idea of how they're going to work with your body. And then if you go your first time, for example, maybe like me, try just an area to see how your body reacts. But if anything negative happens, communicate that with them. They need to know, and in most cases, your technician is going to be receptive, and they're going to tweak how they sugar your body in the future. Case in point being when I bruised the first time, and then they made some changes to the sugaring paste and a little change on how they removed it, you know, just their technique. I don't know if there's like a name for the flicking technique, but they changed things up, and then I haven't bruised since. So communicate. If you need a break, if you change your mind, like let's say you go in and you're like, I want a full pelvic, and then you're like, I can't take this pain. You can tell them midway through, okay? Never mind, please, let's omit the inside lips. Let's just do the outside for now. This is too painful, or I'm too stressed, or I'm too whatever. So communicate. Be honest with these technicians so that they can do the best job for you. The last caveat that I do want to mention is yeast. Now, I bring the topic of yeast up because I know a lot of folks, well, not a lot of folks, but I know that there are folks in the LS community that do get yeast infections, or for whom yeast is a problem. And further, I know that some folks think, oh no, sugar near the vulvar area equals a yeast infection. So I know that there may be some concerns about that. So I just wanted to kind of acknowledge and validate that as a concern. Personally, I've had sugaring 3 times so far, and I've never had yeast infections. That said, I haven't had a yeast infection since I was probably 15 years old. So ever since getting lichen sclerosus, I haven't had a single yeast infection. So that, maybe my body just isn't as prone to them. So I don't want you to think like, just because I didn't have yeast, you won't have yeast. I can't make that promise. But what I can say is, in general, folks that get sugaring typically don't get that yeast type reaction. Really, the sugaring is just on there very briefly. Remember, it's attaching to the hair follicle, not the skin, and then it's instantly removed. And then at the end, they are going to clean you off. So it's not like the sugar is kind of staying on the skin or staying on the vulva for extended periods of time after. It will be cleaned up afterwards. I do think that if you're prone to yeast infections though, and this goes back to the last caveat, is talk to your technician about this. Tell them, I am prone to recurrent yeast infections and I'm very nervous about putting sugar on the vulva. Can you speak on the risk of getting a vulvar yeast infection from sugaring? And have that conversation and see if this is right for you. And if it's not, then maybe laser is a better option, or maybe trimming is a better option. But again, it's all about being transparent, asking those questions up front, and making sure that you're comfortable with those answers moving forward. All right, so in this video, I spoke to you about what didn't work, which was waxing and shaving for me, and what does work for me, which is sugaring. I talk about why sugaring tends to be the preferred method, especially over waxing, from gynecologists by comparing the differences between waxing and sugaring. I shared my experience with sugaring and some very, very, very important caveats at the end. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, if you like these kind of lifestyle videos and want more of these in the future, please give us a thumbs up. If you have lifestyle questions, drop them in the comments. We love getting your requests, and I have an active spreadsheet with all of the requests that come in. So I'm happy to do videos on that in the future. And that is it for this one. I will catch you in the next one.